What's up, guys? Ben here, bringing you another video today. It is time. We've completed 2 weeks of the Major 1 qualifiers. We have a bit of a 3-week break coming up before the online or inaugural online tournament, Major 1 tournament. Anyway, we've seen all 12 teams play 4 matches each. Some have overperformed, and I think have surprised us. Some have underperformed, and we're definitely going to talk about those. So I think we have a good feel to rank the 12 teams going into the break. I'm going to show you in real time and rank them with you. Talk about what they need to work on going in, and yeah, kind of where the CDL kind of lays at the moment. I think at the moment, no one's really running away with this thing. A couple of teams are 4-0, but I think everybody's got something that they need to work on going into this break. And I actually feel that going into this first online tournament and the first event got a pretty wide open field, more open than I thought last year. So let's dive in. All right, so this is our tier list from the last video we did. If you're new to these, I don't do the letter thing. I do it this way. We do a little bit of categories. We've done anywhere from 5 to 4 categories, depending on how the teams kind of split. I think for now we're gonna do 4. You see that there is this online cheese Cloud9 category. That's going away. That was a one-time thing last week. I think I know where to put them. Let's start from the top. We've got Sunday regulars. These are going to be your top 3, top 4 teams I expect to make it deep on the weekend at every event. Fighting for Sundays are the teams I think are potentially top 4, maybe top 6. Teams that should be in the mix on the weekend, get past the first 2 days. Maybe not your strong contenders to win an event, but they have an opportunity to get in on the mix on Sunday. Mid-pack is exactly what you think it is. It's going to be everybody kind of in the middle of the league who's really either, fighting to be in that top 6, maybe they're solid top 8, maybe they're top 10. They're kind of fighting for a champ spot. It sort of evolves over the course of the year, and missing pieces are people that are just, the teams are just not competitive. They're not close, they're not competitive, and they probably need a roster change or a personnel change to move up a tier. All right, let's start at the bottom. We're going to start with Vegas Falcons, and I'm going to keep them in that spot. Still have not won a series. They played Toronto and FaZe last week. Did finally win a map against FaZe on Control Vault, but the respawns again this week were not great. I think they were much closer to the Toronto series than they were in the FaZe series. In the FaZe series, both hardpoints they played were just complete blowouts, and the S&D was not as close to the FaZe one, but the Toronto protocol S&D did go to round 11. I think these Vegas guys can play search. So the problem is that I just don't think that multiple personnel on this team are good enough essentially at this level to play the respawn required. I think Kix, has definitely been the standout player, and I think he's, kind of the building block, at least at the moment. I think Xnid's probably the one next. He's probably shown the most promise, but Roxas, a body haven't done enough. I think this team really lacks a second sub player. And so I think, if Xnid, if they're going to try and get Xnid more comfortable in the second sub, where they make changes, great. If not, I think sooner rather than later, you're going to see them try to experiment with some of their academy players and see which combination of players could make waves going forward. But I wouldn't expect Vegas to, at this moment, make it past Friday at the event. And they play Optic in the first round of the minor tournament. So, yeah. I think it's a tough road to continue for these guys, but we knew this coming in. We knew that the potentially the best version of this team won't be till Major 3, and they got to develop, they got to feel it out. All right, I want to move LAG up. I really do. Once again this week, they played Thieves. They played them pretty close, went to 4 maps, could have potentially gone to 5. Optic, that won 5 maps. But these guys now have lost 2 game 5s, 2 game 4s, and they're 0-4, and I just cannot move them outside of missing pieces. I just feel this team slaying is just not consistent. I just feel something is amiss here. They have only won one of the 6 S&Ds that they have played so far. And that's a huge concern for me, because I think there's a real quality of search player that should be on this roster, but they just can't win the game mode. And you can't win S&Ds. You're not going to win 3 respawns unless you're the craziest respawn team of all time, and they are not. This is not like a Vegas situation from last year. LAG's just kind of at the bottom until they either address this S&D issue, or players like Skies and Priesta, who I don't think have played well, either step up or get replaced. It just kind of is what it is. Their first round matchup at the minor tournament is Minnesota. So I think there's a chance for them, and we'll get to Minnesota later on this video, I think, to maybe get some momentum. But then once they win, they got to play Toronto, and I don't see it. I mean, again, they played if everybody close. It's possible that, with some break, with some time, they can figure out some of their issues. But I think maybe at best they're getting top 8 online. And unfortunately, that 0-4 kind of hold that they're in with Cloud9, Toronto, and Vegas coming up. I just don't see how this team makes a winner's bracket unless they win out and get very lucky. I mean, realistically, they're going to have to beat Toronto twice, both in the minor tournament and in the qualifiers. So I just think for LAG, I got to leave them in pieces. All right, next up we have Cloud9. I am going to move them into mid pack. We're going to go ahead and delete this row. They opened up with a nice victory versus the Minnesota Rocker earlier on the weekend, which was nice because we wanted to see them get on the board. They played a pretty fun series against Carolina, and you know, they got off to a really hot start in that series, and we're like, okay, you know, Carolina, we'll talk about later in this video, look like, you know, potentially one of the teams early on. They look at a tournament contender. They're the first team to get reverse swept, Cloud9. And I just, something is amiss with the AR duo on this team. Both Attach and Sib have two of the worst overall and game mode specific KDs, specifically in Respawn. I just couldn't have predicted that for both these guys, especially Sib, who I think is extremely talented and has often been a top 15, top 10 player of the year kind of conversation year to year considered, and has played at a very high level. Respawn almost every year of his career in the CDL, is really struggling to adapt to this game, it seems like. So I'm very concerned for this Cloud9 team if both these ARs really continue to struggle. I'm not at a roster change period yet because it's only 2 weeks with them, but this could be a team that makes an early change because the submachine guns and Mac and Crab have been not bad. Especially this week, I thought they were solid. They have LAG, Miami, and Atlanta FaZe, and they're currently 1-3, so they need to basically win out, and potentially that Atlanta FaZe matchup with the slow start for this for Cloud9 and for FaZe could potentially be a winner's bracket eliminated. Eyes on that if LAG somehow get, or rather Cloud9 get past LAG or Miami, but I feel like a stumble will come against one, and then unfortunately Cloud9 looks like a losers bracket team for Major 1. That being said, I will say that Cloud9 have gotten the friendlier side of the Minor 1 bracket, being at the top of the bracket, first match against Vancouver. If they win, then they get that rematch against Carolina. You get past that, you're in semis. You're probably playing either Texas or Boston. There's a regame path here for Cloud9 if they use the next 3 weeks effectively. So we'll see what they can do. I think they have a real chance against the Surge, and we'll get to them in a minute. Last thing for Cloud9, last stat I want to leave you with, something to watch over this break. Control, 0-4 so far in 4 series. I know 2 of those. You guys were on tilt with the online thing, but you didn't win either of the controls this week on Vault Control. So let's see what Cloud9 can do with Hasi likely coming in, the map pool sort of changing. Can they get some wins on the board in control? You don't want to be a team like they did against Carolina where you go up 2-0, you can't win control, and you let people back into a series and lose the game 5. So let's see how they play, but I like the spot I have them in right now. We're gonna get into a little bit dicey situation, not dicey, but I'm gonna move Boston up a bit here, and I want to kind of talk about these 2 teams, Miami and Vancouver, because I feel like they're kind of in similar spots, and it's really hard for me to sort of rank them. I want to keep this mid-pack in no order thing because I think it's just going to kind of continue to shuffle, but both these teams I kind of think are sort of in the same spot of being the 9th team or the 8th team. I just don't know which one of these is like the last spot in or champs. Let's start with Surge. Played Texas, Optic Texas, and Boston this week. Didn't win either match. I mean, the Texas one was a classic Surge series that we've seen in the past. They take one map and they get blown out in the other 3. And the Boston series was tough because Vancouver was actually up 2-1 going into map 4. Played a great control, played a great S&D on Skyline, but then lost the vault pretty handily, and then played a pretty close red card, but just didn't look like in a position to real clutch that one up. And that's just been the concern with Vancouver Surge now. Since Ender has not been on the team, honestly, since like Major 1 of last year, I just don't see the game 5 ice with this squad. I'm concerned this Vancouver team is just, they're just eh. They're just eh. I would say 0-4 is definitely playing a little bit better this year, especially in Respawn, which you like. Abuza has not played as good. He needs to step up individually because right now he is not playing at the level that we expect out of him. He's tweeted stuff about online COD the last couple of days. Need to see him focus back up for the January matches and the minor tournament. And Hixie has been about what we expect. Obviously, you know, if they were playing a little bit better, I think you can get away with a sort of like kind of 0.9, 0.85 kind of territory he's in. He's always gonna need to get a few more kills there, but you kind of know what you were expecting from him. And Nassie's been okay, but I expect Byron to settle into a much more consistent role once Abuza kind of figures out kind of how he can play a little bit more efficiently here. So there's opportunity for Vancouver, but right now, like it's just they don't seem like a team to me that is capable of, you know, punching above their weight at the moment. And that's why, unfortunately, I had to kind of put them in the mid pack. Now, I will say for Vancouver, 1-3, and here's their schedule coming in after the minor tournament. They have Vegas, Carolina, and Minnesota. So you could maybe win 2 and get lucky at 3 and 4. I would say Vegas and Minnesota are winnable matches for them. Those are not, you're not playing Thieves, Toronto, Optic, FaZe. Carolina's the hardest one of the 3. But, if they beat Vegas and Carolina, they go in that final match day and they get a real chance to make winners bracket. So we'll see what they can pull off. And as we talked about with Cloud9 for Vancouver, they're on that top side of the minor bracket, and the same thing kind of applies, right? They get past Cloud9, they kind of maybe upset Carolina in this minor tournament, then all of a sudden you got Boston or Texas. You see where I'm going with this. There's opportunity for Vancouver to get some momentum here. So you gotta keep grinding, keep at it, try and get some confidence for Abuza, get comfortable on Hosty as it comes in, and maybe we'll slowly shuffle Vancouver up, but they're really in danger of making losers bracket, unfortunately, for this first event. And unfortunately, the same can be said about the Miami Heretics. They obviously, start off the season with a nice hot win against Vegas. We were like, okay, like these Miami Cats, Rancor, Real playing good. And they have lost 3 game 5 since then. Most recently this weekend against Boston and Toronto. And the main issue with this team is their respawn looks fine. 4 and 3 in Hardpoint, winning across a bunch of different maps. So they are 0-2 in Vault and 0-1 on Protocol. Or no, Vault Control. Gotta tip that. They look excellent on that map. S&D, they have 1 win in 7 maps. That is not good enough if you want to be a top tier CDL team. And I think the biggest issue for them is just making the right mid-round decisions and being aggressive and decisive enough when they get bloods. They are getting first bloods. If you go through all the individual matches, they are getting first bloods more often than getting first blooded. The problem is they're only winning like 50% of those rounds. So you're leaving a lot of rounds on the table. For reference, they've had in 60 rounds, 31 first bloods, and they've only won 16. So you're leaving 15 across 7 maps. You see that, like, if you're giving teams 2 free rounds or you're throwing a map, that's the difference between winning 6-4 and losing 4-6. So, or 6-3, 3-6. You get my point. Like, they're not competitive in search, and it's what's holding them back from closing a few of these series. So unfortunately, I think for me, if I throw the teams, I think I have more faith in Vancouver's issues because they're just like unclutching across some game modes. They've been good at search. Like, Miami has not been good at S&D, and I don't know with this personnel if they're going to fix it. But I will say, if you're a Miami fan, Real, Rancor look good. So, maybe they may bring Super in at some point here and kind of even things out if Lucky and Metals can't step up. So we shall see. Miami 1 and 3. They have the following schedule, and this is not easy. And unfortunately for Miami, I fear that they're going to be in winners bracket. Cloud9, that's basically an eliminator match for winners bracket. Thieves, probably an L, but we'll see. And Carolina, I don't know. And then the other problem for Miami is that their minor 1 opponent is Atlanta FaZe on that bottom side of that bracket. And somehow you upset Atlanta, who aren't playing that good right now. You've got Thieves. So I am going to make a prediction for this Miami team. I don't think that they are going to be in a great position going into this Madrid tournament. And I'm curious when Super's visa situation is going to get resolved, because I am about 1 or 2 weekends away from moving this Miami team down a tier, to be honest, into roster change territory. So we'll see what they can do over the next couple of weeks with this break, especially in search. I'm going to bounce around a little bit. I'm going to move Minnesota Rocker down here. We talked about on the last episode, like the last tier list. I was like, Carolina, Minnesota get off to an 0-2 start or 2-0 start. Like, we got to tip it. Got to move them up. Unfortunately, this week, reality set in. They lost 2 game 4 series. But after kind of winning seat of the pants, game 5's the first weekend. They lost 2 sets of game 4s. Unfortunately, a couple of cracks have started to show with this Minnesota team. Their hardpoint map pool is not good at the moment of matches. They're 2-0 on Vault, and they're 0-6 on the other map. So we'll see with one of those maps coming out, because I don't think Vault's coming out for Hacienda. If they can go to Hasi, or 2 S&D, 2-2 control, like, you clean up the hardpoint, maybe they can 3-1 a couple of these series instead of going getting 1-3. I would say that Geo and Estriel need to get going a little bit more in respawn. Nero and Paul haven't been too bad in the game mode, and Estriel and Geo have actually been good in search. It's just the respawn for me for those 2 guys has been a little rough. So let's see what Minnesota can do, but unfortunately I have to slide them down a tier into the mid pack. Coming up though, they are in the midst of a very difficult schedule. They're 2-2 right now, so they gotta find 2 wins from the following 3 to guarantee winners bracket. Toronto Ultra, Atlanta FaZe, Vancouver Search. I think there's a pretty good chance that Vancouver match, depending on how Toronto FaZe go, might be a winner makes winners bracket in the last spot type deal. This is a tough one for Minnesota. This is always going to be their trickier split. Their splits, especially at the back end of the season, if you go look at their schedule, like Major 3 and Major 4, like are way easier than their first two splits. They just got to try and survive that. And they've got a young team that I think is going to kind of like, you know, I don't think there's a team that's like a super fast progressing team. They're going to be kind of in the pack of, you know, teams progressing at the normal rate. So I'm patient with them. I don't think they need a roster change. They just need to get better at hardpoint. We mentioned earlier in the video when we talked about LAG. That's who they're going to score up in the minor tournament, and then they have Toronto if they win that. So, you know, I think if Toronto get a little bit of a slow start coming out of the break, and, you know, you can get past those first two, you know, maybe you can get a nice little top four, and those points might be really big for Minnesota in this tournament. So let's see what they can do. They got some obvious issues. They got to fix it. They're in it. Let's talk Boston. I'm going to slide them up a tier here. The Boston Breach are, them and Carolina are the biggest surprises to me in the first 2 weeks in a positive fashion. The only thing I will say about Boston is every series they have played so far has gone to game 5. And they've won 3 of these. Most recently this weekend beating Miami and Vancouver. So I have to give that the respect that it deserves. Like being 3-1 with how the beginning of the game is and where we thought this team is going to be, I got to respect that. They do need to, at some point, learn to win these series a little cleaner in 3-0, 3-1 fashion. But you got to like what you've seen from Snoop, Big Wake, and Cammy. You know, this is a team I thought coming in the split was going to really struggle, and they have super surprised, especially for me in a hardpoint and search. Like, I thought S&D again would be a problem, but those two game modes combined 10 and 6. Like, they are really finding their own. Skyline might not be this team's best map, though. I think potentially something exploitable for teams going forward after the break, but they've been pretty good at most of the map mode combos. The only map and mode combo right now they don't have a winning record on is Control 1 and 3, so we'll see if they can improve on that going into the break. I would say also Purge, you know, he's a perennial 0.95. Can he kind of get to the next level? Probably not, but I think from what I know about this Boston situation, like he's an essential piece as to why, even though he's not slaying well, his leadership, his game awareness, his IGLing is kind of like really helping them kind of play effectively paired with Cammy. Like this Boston team, you got to tip to start. The 3-1, they just probably got to win one of these remaining 3 matches to get in a winner's bracket. And unfortunately, this trio is actually really hard. This might be probably the hardest 3 matches that someone has. This split, they got Carolina. So Carolina, we'll get to in a minute, but they are undefeated to start. Then they got FaZe, who will at some point got to start playing a little bit better. And then Thieves. So there's a world where I could see Boston maybe losing all 3. And then the air comes a little bit out of the balloon. I could see them upsetting 1. That Carolina match I'm circling because it's a big break and one of those teams will probably come in cold. Got to take the start from Boston, but the job's not done. You got to keep, you know, taking this a quality teamwork, quality team play you have and progressing, keep learning the game. Get good at Hacienda, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they were good enough to get a bye in this Minor 1 tournament. So they won't play on the first day, but they will play the winner of Optic Texas versus Vegas Falcons. So probably Optic, unless an upset happens. And Boston already beat them this season. And Optic's not the world's greatest search team. So if you keep playing your strengths in your Boston, grind that series out, I don't see why they can't win their one and then advance to the semis where they're playing either Vancouver, New York, or Cloud9. There is a world where Boston make it to the finals of the Minor 1 tournament. I don't think that's a crazy take. Them and Carolina are like, you know, playing pretty good. So like Boston, or if they continue playing it this way, I like their chances to maybe get top 4 at Madrid. So I'm going to put them in the fighting for Sundays tier. All right, I have to unfortunately drag one of these teams down from fighting for Sunday regulars, and that is Atlanta FaZe. I'm very surprised to be doing this. This is probably the worst that Atlanta FaZe has looked in 6 years of CDL. So that's impressive in its own right that like, we just never see this team lose like 3 matches in a row and look as lost as they did. You know, that 3-0 smoking against Carolina, potentially the low point for this team. They looked great against Vegas though. They kind of trolled the control. But like the 2 hard points in the searches were as bad as clean as you're going to get in an early game series. And I think what's important is that at a base level, the 2 SMGs, Simp and Easy, played really well. The concern I have for Atlanta FaZe is neither AR on their team looks comfortable. Like MC, Volume doesn't look that good at the moment. He put away that ridiculous side, at least for the Vegas series. So we'll see if he turns it around. He slayed pretty well in that series. I'm very concerned about Draz's play, like especially in S&D right now. He's got a 0.61. Like that is no good. He's a search grinder. And I know like S&D8s haven't been popping off. So maybe he's just not getting, like, maybe he's being thrown out of his routine, not getting enough wagers, and, you know, he's just kind of uncomfortable. Like, he's got to figure out what he's got to do over this break to get back on his search prowess. Because even that Vegas series, I was watching him play search, and, like, he just looked uncomfortable. And if they can't be good at S&D, they're not in a situation where their hard point or their control is, like, good enough for them to, you know, like, take 3 respawns off of people at the moment. And so, yeah, I mean, for FaZe, like, the hard point actually, weirdly, people criticize this team and their hard point, but, like, their hard point's been their best game mode, honestly. It's the S&D 1 and 4, control 1 and 3 on vault control that need a cleanup during this break. You know, Atlanta FaZe, like, I'm recording this video on Tuesday. They're probably scrimming today. They're probably the team that's going to take the least amount of time off during this break. I expect them to get into better form, and they have a very favorable kind of schedule coming up. Minnesota, Boston, Cloud9. They're 1 and 3, so they need to kind of win all 3. Cloud9 and Minnesota should be winnable. Boston, we're obviously grinding series out, and if FaZe can't improve their S&D, they could lose that. So FaZe got to have a pretty hot January here to try and kind of make this kind of deficit that they have right now. A lot of people are like speculating like FaZe roster changes. I don't think they're there yet. And I don't even think one split with this team if they get like top 8 for a roster change. I think, you know, they're gonna probably take it one more split after that, and if it's really bad, they'll make changes. Teams never made midseason roster changes in the history of the CDL, so you gotta tip that. In Miami, first round of the minor tournament, kind of like them to probably be the favorite in that matchup. And then they got Thieves if they win that, and they already like took Thieves to a game 5, and we'll get to Thieves later, but it's not like Thieves are playing A+ COD. Like, there are some issues in Thieves' gameplay, so, you know, I think we're FaZe. Try and get momentum in that minor 1 tournament. You come out, you make a run to semis, to finals. I think you get that mojo back and make the online run. If I had to make a prediction, I think they're probably going to get top. I don't know. I don't know how to predict the Thieves one. If they beat Thieves, I feel like they're a pretty good value to take that confidence and like maybe run and win the whole thing. I could see them getting, you know, just top 8 because they fall at Thieves in a game 5 again. And this team's got a bad record against Scrap. But my prediction is that they'll get much better online, take winners bracket, and then we'll see. I just don't have them in the top tier contenders right now based on this worst start they've ever had in the CDL. All right, next up we have Carolina, and I want to move them up a tier. I'm gonna wait until after the minor tournament before I do it. Like, if they play good at the minor tournament, get top 4, I'll be like, guys, these guys are gonna be a contender for the minor. Are gonna be a contender for the major 1 in Madrid. I mean, you gotta tip the 4-0 start. They've beaten Vegas, LAG, Atlanta, and Cloud9. So they've avoided Toronto, they've avoided Optic, they've avoided Thieves. So, you know, I still want to see them play one of the 3 teams above them. But like, really have no complaints about this start. I mean, they've looked great, especially in respawn, a combined 9-2 across hardpoint and control. 3-2 in S&D is solid. That's good. Expect that. They're a good search team. I think some of their S&D struggles, they got to figure out how to get Reese into some better spots and improve his decision making there. Like, everybody's playing good in the respawn. And I think at least for Reese, he's playing quick in the flex mode. So even though he's not really getting his kills, not having to pop off mats, those kills are getting cleaned up. This team's got a very good non-traded killed percentage, and in reverse, like as far as, you know, what they're forcing on their opponents in it. So they're just trading well, playing quick. TJ Gwynn popping off. Austin's having an insane start to the season. Like, I just think if you're Carolina, couldn't have dreamed up a better start to the season for them. Like, 4 wins are already in winners bracket for me, barring some insane scenario in which somehow teams get 4 wins and don't make it. Like, I don't see how that's possible. Boston, Vancouver, Miami. You know, I can see them dropping finally a match after the break. That's my concern with Cloud9 or with Carolina, is that knowing the history of the players, I just want to see a little bit more that they aren't going to just kind of waste this break, right? Come in a little complacent, not put the work in Hasi, fall a little bit behind. People watch their VOD and catch up. Want to see Carolina grind this break, and then I'll know over there for a real, because right now they're real. You know, they're in that fighting for Sundays. I expect them right now. If we ran the event, they'd get 4th. I just want to know a little bit more, and maybe a deeper run the minor tournament will help know kind of where they rank the teams above them. They are actually on a very favorable side of the bracket. The only one that's for those 3 teams above them right now on the tier list is Optic on their side of the bracket. They have a bye. They'll play the winner of Vancouver, New York, expect them to beat that team, and they'll probably play their Optic or Boston, and I think they could eventually beat those guys. So I think Carolina finals, minor 1 tournament doable. And yeah, I got to tip this Carolina start. They just got to keep plugging away, keep doing what they're doing, and good things will be ahead for them, and potentially be our surprise top 4 team if FaZe really continue to struggle. I think I like the ranking of Sunday regulars. We're going to start with Optic Texas. And look, like, you guys want me to address the Pred thing. I know as much as y'all as to what's going on there. It obviously seems like a complicated situation, complicated enough that no one wants to talk about it. I've heard some things. It's pretty much the same stuff that you guys have heard. None of it is primary source stuff. None of it is good enough that I'm going to go on stream and say, this is exactly what's happening. Here's kind of all the chain of events. I hear the same info that you guys do. So until everyone kind of addresses it transparently, and I don't think Pred Stream really did that the other day, I don't know what to tell you on that front. They made a roster change, obviously. Pred's going back to Australia. He says a free agent now, so he's not with the team. And who came in and played okay this weekend, didn't come in and drop a 1.5. He's sitting at like an overall 0.93, same kind of KD and respawn, playing good in S&D though, and 0.79 in control, which has been the game mode he's struggling in. So I think Kyler will get to more of an even keel and figure it out. But if you're Optic, this was a good weekend. You won both matches against Vancouver and LAG. 3-1 and 3-2 respectfully. All right, areas of concern for Optic. Rewind and red card are the two. Not so much red card search. They look good at that map. Red card and rewind, hardpoint and rewind S&D. They are 0-3 in those. They didn't play rewind hardpoint. That was like an auto veto for them all the first 2 weeks. So one of those red card and rewind, one of those hardpoints is probably being removed from the pool for Hasi. As far as S&D, not sure which map's coming out in that one. They didn't play Skyline Search either, for frame reference on that. So there's a couple of maps they haven't really filled in the dots on here, so hopefully they can work on that over the break. Not really worried about this team when it comes to Hacienda, because like they have a lot of Hasi experience on this team, and the way the map is designed, it's not like I'm worried about Ant, who didn't compete. When that map was in, he didn't really get in until the year after, but he was playing a lot of shells on that map, especially in S&D in the Black Ops 4 year. So I like them. They just got to keep plugging away this break, keep getting more Camo Kyler, and I think they're a winners bracket team. They're a contender. They have a good chance to win this minor tournament because they're on the top side. You got Vegas. We already talked about it. That's probably a free dub. They got Boston, where they've got a chance to, kind of avenge their loss to. Boston's a good search team. It's not easy out. Then Carolina, Vancouver, New York, and then you're in finals. I think for Optic, should make it to semis. I would assume in the minor tournament, if they lose to Boston, we'll have some concerns. And then they have Vegas, Thieves, and Toronto, which I like for them. I like that in January, you're not going to have a freebie schedule. They're going to have to test themselves against Toronto and Thieves, who they're going to need to beat to win the Major 1 tournament. You might as well play them now and get a feel for their style and their vetoes. So Optic will be a winner's bracket team. Optic will have a good seed at the tournament. Optic is in the Major 1 tournament. Can they close out the LAN? That we'll find out in a month and a half's time. So 6 to 8 weeks. 6 to 8 weeks. Sounds like you're ordering a package, you're ordering something on pre-order in 6 to 8 weeks. But you get my point. I think Optic are in a good spot. Can't really complain too much if you're an Optic fan right now. All right, Toronto Ultra. I'm going to leave them in the 2 spot. 3-0 Vegas. Went to game 5 with Miami. So my takeaway from Toronto in these first 2 weeks is they are probably the best search team in the game right now. That's really undisputed to me. Highest first blood percentage in the league at 57%. They're winning 80% of those. Like, I can keep going on S&D stats, but they're all mostly good. And I think everybody's going to go and watch their S&D and copy like how they play. So, and they didn't really play any Skyline S&D for what it's worth. The other game modes, they were pretty good, but they were mostly 500 across the board there. So, maybe once they start losing some searches, they'll look a little bit human. But right now, you got to like how they're playing. Jamie's got the lowest KD at a 0.99. Like, main AR drops a 0.99. Everybody else has got a 1. Probably frying. CleanX has been their best player. Ben Beans has come in and played great. Like, I just don't have a lot of concerns about what Toronto's doing. They played mostly every map. We'll see, obviously, how they can adjust to Hasi because, Joe didn't compete when that game was around. Ben was, kind of not in. CleanX and Insight did compete at Champs that year. And we're pretty good at Hasi, if I remember. So, I'm not really worried about this team adjusting to that map. They just got to keep plugging away because they're one of the contenders right now. 4-0 start. Minnesota LAG Optic coming up. Should win at least 2 or 3, if not all those. So they should have a top seed going into Madrid, which their parent org is hosting. And then their run is to the semis, I think, is pretty free at this minor tournament. Minnesota and LAG are not teams that Toronto should be losing to. And that's a case of probably beating either FaZe, Thieves, or Miami to get into finals. So I can see a world with Toronto get top 4 at the minor tournament, I can see a world where they make it to finals. So I think you just kind of keep plugging away. They are in a great spot right now. All right, we're going to wrap it up and talk about the team. I like at the top, LA Thieves. And I would say, and some of y'all might say it's a little bit harsh, but I think Sam Octane would agree with me that I think they did not play well this weekend. They won 2 series 3-1 against LAG and Minnesota. And I think they're lucky that neither of the team they were playing really capitalized on the number of mistakes Thieves was making, especially in hard point. I just think this Thieves team plays a lot of confidence and swagger, and that's good. Their comms are good. Like they are really in flow right now as a squad chemistry. The problem is that their style is aggressive, and they are not respecting the flow of the game enough in these respawns to really close people out. A number of great teams over the years, Dallas Empire, Atlanta FaZe, those first 2 years when they won, kind of champs had similar issues to this. Like I see the kind of equivalent of sort of not the play style, but you get like kind of the box of having swagger and then kind of playing only 8 of 10 minutes of a map. And sometimes, most of the time you win, but a lot of times, or sometimes you are tossing. So I think Thieves need to be more clinical over this break, introduce Hossie in their map pool, and figure out how kind of in the comms, in the flow of decision making to kind of close these maps out early and really blow people out, because they definitely have the potential to do it. Everybody's kind of slaying well. There's really nobody struggling in the specific game modes, other than weirdly enough, Hydra hasn't been like a pop-off S&D player so far for them. So just kind of one to watch, see if Paco can play a little bit better in search. They're only 3-2 in the game mode, but they're 2-2 in control and 7-1 a hard point. And the only hard point loss they honestly tossed against FaZe on Rewind like 2 weekends ago. That being said, I have a couple of other things I want to talk about the Thieves. They only played 2 of the 5 S&Ds in the pool. So they did not try Rewind, Red Card, or Protocol due to length of series or how their vetoes went. We still have a little bit of an unknown how they are in those maps. So it might be exploitable for teams coming out of the break if your Thieves want to try and play all of the maps going into, especially in Search, going into the Major 1 tournament. So you know where you stand, because if you're getting reps on the map for the first time at the Major 1 tournament, that's a very dicey and risky strategy that hasn't always paid off for teams. There's also a chance that their best map, Rewind Hardpoint, gets removed from the map pool for Hacienda, so we'll have to see the announcement we're expecting this week or next about the map pool to see if they get kind of screwed by that. They haven't played Protocol, but I guess they're probably pretty Protocol. I mean, they are as a fry. I don't see. And their subs are good. I don't see why they'd suck at that. But, some map pool considerations, they're actually play Protocol control. So I got to tip them for at least picking that and trying that. Now, the other thing for Thieves that I want to kind of point out is I am a little concerned. This is the last stat I'm going to give you. I am very concerned that their search may be their biggest weakness as a team. We talked about their hard point. I think they'll clean up the clinicality and hard point. But they played 6 S&Ds and they only got 20 first bloods in 53 rounds, which would put them right now amongst all teams in dead last. They got to figure out how to pump those numbers up. It is going to be very difficult to play the way they're playing right now, which is winning a lot of 3v4s, as a surefire way to, continue to have a winning record in this game mode. If they cannot find a way to make rounds easier on themselves, as teams know how they play, counter strat, get better at the game mode, Thieves is going to fall back towards the pack in that game mode. We'll start to see them lose some game 5. We'll start to see them, go down 1-1 this series, maybe 0-2, or tied 1-1, go down 0-2. So that's a big area of improvement for Thieves that they need to figure out in the break, because that is not 37% is not sustainable to win searches. I'm sorry, unless these guys had the flukiest search season of all time, like I've never seen. Elite teams in search are in the mid to high 50s as far as first blood. But other than that, their upcoming schedule, now they are 4-0, is Optic Texas. Their first match back coming after the minor 1 tournament, so that'll be cool. Miami and Boston, they should be able to win all or most of these. They're like Thieves to get a top seed, and again, they're going to be a factor in the Major 1 tournament. And would be my favorite right now tomorrow. We're going to pick a team to win. And as far as the minor tournament, we talked about it. They have Miami and Atlanta. We're teams right now I'd favor them to beat, but again, search issues. If either of those teams kind of find, Miami and FaZe have not been search teams, if those guys kind of figure it out, could be a factor here. I wouldn't pick Thieves right now to get upset by both those teams, but I also won't be surprised if it happens coming out of the break. And it's a little bit of a reality check for Thieves. I mean, I was talking to Nate Shot on stream during the watch party this weekend, and Nate actually, wants them to make sure they learn that upset lesson sooner rather than later. He's speaking that, I think, from a player perspective. I kind of understand where he's coming from. But anyways, you know they're on the bottom side of the bracket. Probably would play Toronto if they beat those teams. Anyway, they have a good chance to win that tournament. And then, yeah, at the major, I expect them to make it to Sunday, and we'll see what happens. So they have the top spot, but, you know, all these teams in the top spot have at least one weakness that they got to work on during this break. Really, everybody on this list does, and I feel pretty comfortable about where it's at. You know, the key things over the next 3 weeks is Hacienda, Hacienda, Hacienda. That's probably the longest tier list video I've ever done, so let me know in the comments what you guys think. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more. And as always, guys, we'll see you on the next one.